Yeah.
society, and you can help provide practical support, expert advice, and crucial companionship this Christmas. It will take a society to beat dementia, and we can't do it alone. Search Alzheimer's Society and donate today.
What makes the best roast dinner is deeply personal, and with all our strong opinions on whether it's best to eat beef or chicken, roasties or mash, and with cauliflower cheese really belongs. It doesn't matter. But one thing isn't up for debate. A roast is always better with deliciously crispy, fluffy, Paxo stuffing. The roast isn't a roast without Paxo, the original stuffing, lovingly crafted since 1990.
Calling all young creatives. It's time to get ready for the future you want. And where better than Global Academy? Here's Imad, a GCSE student in year 11.
GCSEs such as maths, English, and science. I study creative subjects such as media, drama, art design, business, and music technology, which are all recognized by the industry.
Global Academy. Apply now and join us in years 10 or 12. GlobalAcademy.com.
This festive season at McDonald's, get
deals every day.
okay, get a sausage sandwich for just
See, never know people.
6 chicken McNuggets for just £1. Fine. Get lunch deals every day at McDonald's. 18 plus ever. Ends 24th of December. One use one offer. Free supplies and delivery. Participation varies. T's and C's apply.
Brands that use radio are 49% more likely to get noticed. Amplify your advertising at radiocentre.org, assuming you want to get noticed.
This is LBC. Message Natasha Gavin on WhatsApp now. 0345 60 60 973.
It's 6:33
We are
and
driving.
we are discussing, because the government has launched its strategy this week, we are discussing violence against women and girls, and particularly the elements of the strategy that relate to young people being taught about this at school. I had an interesting discussion in the newsroom actually with one of my colleagues about this, because I was saying that we so often focus on young people and young men. I think a lot of what's happening in society more generally is kind of scapegoated onto young men. And there's a brilliant piece that I read by Zina Greenwald, in fact, which she wrote a couple of weeks ago, where she was saying actually if you look at who is most vulnerable to radicalisation, far-right radicalisation, statistically it's middle-aged men, it's men in their 40s and 50s. And yet, if you ask the average person, they would probably say it was teenage boys because of the news coverage around this. And so I said, is schools the place to be focusing our attention? And the person that I was talking to said, well, first of all, it's the only place where you have a captive audience. And second of all, one day those boys will be middle-aged men. And also, they are part of households, which may include fathers and grandfathers. And if they see their fathers and their uncles or anybody else expressing problematic views or engaging in misogynistic behaviours, they will have the knowledge to understand that that is not right and that that's not a legacy that they should continue. And I think that was a really good point, so that shall be right up. Katie has called from Twickenham. What would you like to say?
Hi, I'm thinking practical about this before. I work in adult mental health, my own whole career in adult mental health, and one of the biggest issues that we speak to people who have experience of current or historic domestic violence and health. It's a very significant factor in long-term well-being of in I'm also a mum. I've got 3 boys and 2 girls. And
What's your sense about what's going to happen next?
I mean, yes, the Friday was supposed to be the deadline for everything to come up. We may have gotten a couple 100,000, if that. And again, they're not going to know, what percentage of the documents are still get cut. And specific transfers of material that might be more important than others, we just don't know. But we expect daily releases between now and at least the new year. And again, anyone who has to contain information that is eye-opening and important. And so we have to just be checking consistently to see, when there's a new batch that dropped this morning, And again, it wasn't particularly revelatory, but you never know. In a massive, one case within that massive trench could be actually really significant.
Kyle Cheney, thank you so much. Senior legal affairs reporter at Politico there, who wrote today about this strange, redacted, piecemeal release of the Epstein files. If there are any breaking news stories in that regard, we'll of course bring them to you just as soon as we have them. But for now, we are talking about the government strategy with regard to violence against women and girls. And we'll return to that conversation in just a moment. The time is 6:46.
Sunday with Lewis Goodall.
We're joined now by Layla Cunningham, Reform UK member for Westminster City Council. Whenever there are accusations of anti-Semitism, we need to take them seriously wherever they occur, mustn't we?
Well, you can't take every accusation seriously because some of them are just a political attack.
Do you think that all of those people who've come forward, it's all part of a political smear, a political attack?
Yeah, I do. I have full faith in Nigel, and I know that he's not an anti-Semite. I know he's not a racist.
The perception of what they experience may be rather different to what Farage thinks. Maybe his memory is wrong.
Maybe their memory is wrong.
It's not necessarily binary, Layla. It's not just saying he's definitely a racist or he's not. You could be saying that actually he's just handled this insensitively.
Sunday with Lewis Goodall. Sunday morning from 10. Listen on our free Global Player app or the new LBC app.
What makes the best roast dinner is deeply personal, and we've all got strong opinions on whether it's best with beef or chicken, roasties or mash, and if cauliflower cheese really belongs. It doesn't, by the way. But one thing isn't up for debate. A roast is always better with deliciously crispy, fluffy Paxo stuffing. The roast isn't a roast without Paxo, the original stuffing, lovingly crafted since 1901.
At Lidl, get our deluxe Winter Wonderland Chocolate Village Cheesecake. Caramel chocolate ganache and a creamy base. $6.99 with Lidl Plus. And Good Housekeeping Institute taste approved. Lidl, Winter Value. 18 plus cheap only, subject to availability. Select stores to supply. So that's .co/OBTE X24 for the 12th.
Take your pets over this festive period. Visit petsinnapickle.co.uk and enjoy Christmas covered. The Big Tasty is back at McDonald's, but now it's a double. It's the beefiest Big Tasty of all time ever. The new double Big Tasty. Now at McDonald's. Available July 2026. Price of participation may vary. Subject to
Don't let missing teeth stop you smiling. At Banning Dental, our experts could restore your beautiful smile with premium dental implants. See online for our price match promise. Banning Dental Group Clinics. Keep on smiling. Keep on smiling. Keep on smiling. And the whole is
Leading Britain's conversation.
Apui.
with Natasha Bevan.
6:49. Just a quick note before the adverts there. It's Pam Bondi that they have seen their names and they got mixed up in my head. But let's return now to our conversation about violence against women and girls and what we make of the government strategy to try and reduce it by half. And I know they've said that because it's given them a tangible and measurable target. They're saying about the factors that they wanted to reduce it by half. Which really didn't sit well with me at all. But they've given themselves a tangible period to reduce incidents of violence against women and girls by half. Denise has called for statements. What do you make of this?
So I agree with you. Halving on its own doesn't seem like they're reaching far enough and they're ambitious enough. I do also think that it gets something much more achievable over the long term.
Yeah.
That's what I think about it.
And what did you call to say? What do you make of the strategy more broadly?
More broadly, the strategy I feel is very encouraging. One-on-one with taken this kind of measure, this kind of movement in terms of something like this. That's such a big problem. It's 1 in 8 women over the last year who have been abused in one way or another. Shocking figures. I recently had cause to attend the hospital appointments actually, and I was interested because the strategy was made public, and I was asking if the people on the ground had training on domestic abuse, and none of them had actually had the training. They had to call somebody of their manager in if they recognised any kind of sign.
It's so interesting, and it sounds so important the work that you're doing, Denise, but it's interesting that we focus on coercive control because it reminds me of, I read He Said, She Said, which is by Dr. S.I.R.K, and one of the points she was making is that if you've been a victim of coercive control, because of the impact that it has on your mental health, it makes you less credible as a witness. And that's one of the things that I really feel having known people that have gone through this, that the social services and now the people who are interacting potentially with victims and survivors really need to understand the landscape, and they're just not there. It needs so much resource, doesn't it, to give people that type of training.
Exactly. And I can tell you from personal experience, you kind of end up in a state of you're not quite sure what reality is going to happen once you leave the relationship. So it's hard to articulate. I certainly didn't have the language for it until I went on to study it further, and now I'm a professional in the field. So it's really hard to stop the time because it's such an insidious abuse that happens. When you're trying to explain it, when you're trying to articulate it to others, they seem like really mundane, small things, but actually when they add up over time, they really affect your mental health.
Absolutely. Denise, thank you so much for your call in, and thank you as well for the work that you're doing in this area. That is what Denise has just expressed there. Some of the concerns that have come from other groups which are supporting women who've been affected by this, and they're saying that there's just not enough being put into this. This is such a widespread issue that the amount that government has put in, I think it's just under 3 billion. I mean, it seems like a lot, and it is much more than any other government has ever invested specifically into prevention on this issue. But when we look at how many women have been affected, 1 in 4 women will experience domestic abuse of some description throughout their lifetime. It's actually not nearly enough. Louis is called from Crystal Palace. What would you like to say?
I've pleasure of speaking to you now. I understand the show. This thing here, this looks like to me like a male culture system with a mother, a Nigerian black mother, is affecting male behavior. Policies in schools where the government is implementing. Who's going to be accountable for these in schools?
When you say a Nigerian black mother, do you mean Kemi Badenoch?
Kemi Badenoch, yes, the leader of the shadow. Yeah. Right. A black woman. It's better to be or better to believe. Listen, and this is referring to like a one-time episode with adolescents.
Yeah.
It's not talking about none whatsoever.
Well, she's doing that populist thing, isn't she, of taking what she thinks the average person knows about this issue and then making that what is known more generally. So she's saying, she's claiming that Jess Phillips and Keir Starmer watched adolescents, were suddenly made aware of this issue. I mean, Jess Phillips has been campaigning on it for the majority of her career and has worked in domestic violence refuges, but she thinks their awareness of it was piqued by adolescents. Because people are so much more aware of the relatively rare incidents of sexual violence that happen as a result of asylum-seeking men, she's sought to place the focus as opposed to the vast majority of sexual violence and domestic abuse is perpetrated by British citizens.
Exactly my point. She's not referring to any of that shit. I couldn't agree with it anymore. Honestly, I remember growing up and there were women's self-defense classes. They can still kick back right now. They're still strong right now. They can't really that convictions that go against women and girls now. No one deals with the now, the here and now. Everyone wants to talk about like 10 years later, 10 years later, 10 years later, 28 years later.
Yeah.
It's not a joke, like honestly, and then you've got a woman on the opposition, which I'm going to find
It's disappointing. It's incredibly disappointing. Although she has, I think, said that she no longer identifies as Nigerian. Just speaking to your first point.
That's another thing there. Are you going to disrespect your own culture? Right? And are you going to disrespect your own boys and men of this country are not as bad as other men and other boys from other countries that are coming in and just doing the bad thing.
Well, what goes on in the inner workings of Kemi Babe Knott's mind is probably something that we would do better not to explore, Louis. But thank you so much for your call and for your contribution. Lex has called from Ealing. What would you like to say?
Oh yeah, I called in the other day and spoke about the work I'm trying to do with regards to unhappy misogyny. And I just think it's extremely important that more men do try to get involved with that.
I agree.
Yeah, I think that a couple of years ago when I got challenged on some of my misogynistic views, going on that journey, it really helped me to understand how it really benefits men as well, even though the primary reason really is about women and girls. I think that the way the men interact with each other, like a teenage age, that kind of culture, that the way they talk to you, it's not really it's not really well to the stage. And then it just kind of gets embedded in their language as something that's just okay to say, do,
That's really interesting. So can you share with us an attitude that you had that you were made aware of?
Yeah, I apologize for repeating it, but it's helpful, which was, I used to think that women's clothing choices was an indication of attention to that. What I used to think. And then obviously getting challenged on that was a great challenge and obviously depending on the moment. But then kind of the opening of me to kind of learn more, realising that there's that time and understanding how
Lex, I'd love to go to talk to you for longer, but we're actually out of time for this hour. But definitely, let's speak again, if not actually get you into the studio, because I think it's fascinating the work that you're doing. Thank you so much for all of your contributions to that hour. Coming up in the next hour of the show, young people across the UK will be able to study or gain work experience throughout the EU's Erasmus scheme for the first time since Brexit, after government announced an agreement to rejoin at a cost of £570 million. The government is keen to emphasise that it isn't just for university students, but also the apprenticeships and in other types of further education. This is such good news for British young people. They'll have the opportunity to gain the experience and perspective that travelling and living abroad brings. I want to know about your experience of this. What does world travel bring that can't be accessed in other ways? And what did Brexit temporarily rob young British people of?
On your radio, on the LBC app.
Hey, LBC.
Leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
From Locals Newsroom at 7 o'clock, the two US politicians who co-wrote the law requiring full disclosure of the Epstein files say Donald Trump has broken the law. LBC's Washington correspondent Simon Marks says Democrat Ro Khanna and Republican Thomas Massie plan to bring legal challenges, including articles of impeachment against the Attorney General Pam Bondi.
There will be others, including almost certainly legal action, trying to spark the courts into forcing the President of the United States to release everything that is in the government's permission. And then, of course, there'll be a huge row over what should and should not be redacted.
The inclusion of images of celebrities and public figures in the
it is a good idea to put everybody in the same room. What is missing still is any incentive for Putin to end the war. Russia's been attacking Ukraine for years, and so far, neither the US nor others have really put substantial pressure on Russia to get them to want to stop it.
A Metropolitan Police sergeant who was accused of subjecting a woman to a serious sexual assault has been sacked. Sergeant Leo Boissin was dismissed without notice after a misconduct panel found he had breached professional behaviour standards. The attack occurred while the officer was off duty on November the 20th, 2022. Tens of thousands of people in Bangladesh have attended the funeral of a youth leader who was shot dead by masked gunmen in the capital Dhaka. Sharif Osman Hadi was a key figure in last year's student-led uprising that toppled the long-term Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina. Motoring organisations are forecasting exceptionally busy roads over the next few days, with getaways peaking today and Christmas Eve. They recommend people leave more time for their journeys. Busy weather tonight. A band of rain will move into the southwest and Wales, mostly dry elsewhere, windy in the north, lows of 4 degrees. From Global's newsroom for LBC, I'm Rachel Wright.
This is LBC, leading Britain's conversation with Natasha Devon.
It's just gone 3 minutes after 7, so great news for British young people. They will be able to access the Erasmus scheme again. This is a scheme which allows young people in further education, university students, but other types of further education as well, including apprenticeships, to be able to travel to the 27 member countries of the European Union and work or study in those countries. And I just think that this is so important. It's such an important thing to be able to offer to people. Travel, in fact, I was speaking in the week to a guy called Ed Kerwin, who founded this thing called Empathy Week. I did some filming with them because we were making videos about people who have slightly unusual, atypical careers. And mine was one of them. But he was talking to me about the work that he does with Empathy Week, and he essentially travels the world and makes films about people who live in different countries and tells their stories. And he said that travel, there's really no substitute for travel in terms of understanding different cultures, fostering empathy, which just means understanding that not everybody has your perspective, that there are different perspectives on things. Doesn't mean you have to agree with them, just means acknowledging different perspectives. And just broadening horizons, broadening mind. I remember Trevor Noah, one of my favourite people, it's not even one of my favourite comedians, it's one of my favourite people, saying that travel is never a waste of money, that it gives you an education in of itself. And the fact that we made it harder with Brexit for young people to be able to access that was really hard. And I just wanted to dedicate this hour to your stories about that. If you have lived or worked abroad, if you can tell me what it is that travel gives you in that regard, if you can describe it to me, the number to call is 0345 6060 173. You can text 84850 or send a comment to LBC via my WhatsApp. Well, joining us to discuss this is Professor Andy Long, who is Vice Chancellor and Chief Executive of Northumberland University and Chair of Universities from North East England. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. How do you respond to this news about Erasmus?
It's really good news for all of the reasons that we've given. It gives more opportunities for our students to learn skills, gain experience in different countries and cultures. They will build confidence and ultimately make a big difference to their future trajectory. They'll fundamentally be more employable because of the experiences that they have. I think the other thing that's really important about Erasmus to universities is it's not a two-way street. But we also get students coming into the UK to study at our institutions and mix with our communities here. So our students also have the community as incoming students as well.
I was going to ask you about that because one of the criticisms of this that has come from the opposition is that the UK traditionally has had more people coming from Europe than we have had British students going to Europe. But in terms of what that will do for the university sector, which is struggling at the moment, is there an advantage there for you?
I think the advantage really is to our students' experience. And ultimately, the more we can So I think that's really where the benefit is. But I'm aware of some of that criticism. Obviously, we don't know what happened in the region. We don't know whether that balance will be the same. But there have also been studies, that have shown the enormous economic impact as well as income Erasmus students used to have in communities who are joining subscriptions to the schemes.
So I know that this is wrong because I read some commentary on it earlier, but a text is coming from Sarah on 84850 saying, Brexit didn't work one bits of anything, stop your lies, more students went to the EU under the choice of Erasmus. I know for a fact that that's not true because I specifically read a piece about it, but you've seen it happen, so what would your response be to that?
No, it's not true. And strictly speaking, of course, we could have been members of Erasmus all around, even with Brexit. Boris Johnson said as much in 2020. He originally said that Brexit was no threat to the Erasmus scheme, but ultimately that he chose to withdraw. So we're really delighted that the current government has chosen to rejoin. But there's no truth in that. There's certainly fewer students travelling to European countries. And one of the things about Erasmus is it's a program that involves all of those countries and gives our students equal access to any country, which wasn't the case with the Turing scheme. And of course, there are no additional fees for anyone to pay to study at those overseas universities, which wasn't guaranteed with the Turing scheme.
What about for staff that work in universities? Are there benefits for them in terms of being able to kind of broaden their understanding of what happens in different universities throughout the EU?
Yeah, absolutely. Of course, there are institutions that support staff mobility as well. It's on a much smaller scale than student and young people's mobility, but all of the places that we make connections with that our students visit, we can build our relationships with those institutions which might stretch a lot further than just student mobility. So, for example, research partnerships through the Horizon Europe programme, which we're also now involved in.
Professor Andy Long, thank you so much, Vice-Chancellor and Chief Executive of Northumbria University and Chair of Universities for North East England. Well, also joining us is Mauricio Cuttin, who is the Chief International Spokesperson for the British Youth Council. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. How do you respond to this news about Erasmus?
Thank you, Natasha. It's a privilege to be on. Quite frankly, the youth sector is crying of happiness when the announcement was made. It's been a very, very difficult time without Erasmus+. It's often termed as a student exchange scheme that's quite limited, actually. In 2014, the Erasmus scheme expanded to include the Plus, and the Plus includes all the non-formal learning components. It involves the sports sector, it involves the youth sector, it involves the voluntary side of the scheme. And that's the part where the value for money is really seen. You see it in the higher education, but you especially see it in the volunteering side. You see what the youth organizations can do with that funding. And so I think we were all just relieved that finally, after 4 years of ongoing negotiations with government, of ongoing campaigns, we got it through the line, and we'll be back in by 2027. So just a lot of joy.
And when you talk about you can see what youth organisations are able to do with that funding in terms of volunteering, can you give us an example that would illustrate that?
It's about trainings. It's about bringing young people from across the EU27 to the UK and bringing young Brits to the EU27 to learn about a variety of thematics, a variety of issues, to take part in skills exchanges, to take part in initiatives that will grow confidence, that will grow a person's skill set and make them more employable. Oftentimes these are not seen as tangibles, but they are the things that make the difference. And if I could just read a quick statistic, which I read earlier today, we have in this country a problem with youth employment. It's getting worse and worse. Nearly 1 million people are not in education, employment, or trade. 12.6% of the population is 16 to 24 year olds. The job market is getting worse and worse, and yet the opportunities are shrinking for young people. Erasmus Plus is a way for young people to build back that confidence, build back those skills, show themselves to be active citizens, show themselves to be engaged, and really just feel that dignity.
be part of that social fabric and make the change that they want to make in their local communities and beyond. So that's the beauty of Erasmus+. Rejoining it is in the national interest, as much as some politicians might say otherwise. It is financially worthwhile and it's long overdue.
How would you describe the benefit? I'm finding it really difficult to put into words, but it's so much different than a holiday. The benefit of living abroad and immersing yourself for a period of time in a different culture, how would you describe it?
So, 2 years ago, we published a report with an EU institution as the British Youth Council on the need for a stronger bilateral relationship on youth between the EU and the UK. One of the recommendations in that report was rejoining Erasmus+. One of the reasons why we recommended that was we looked at the state sector. This is a sector where youth organizations have seen a drastic level of cuts to their budgets. They've seen a sector of £1.2 billion cut, and as a result, dependent on Erasmus+. The British Youth Council itself, because of the loss of funding, became overly dependent. 40% of the town funding came from Erasmus+. And so that really carried through the work that we were doing on the local, regional, national level, bringing young people together to discuss policy issues of the day, bringing them closer to decision makers, funding things like the UK Youth Parliament as well. And well, since we left, it's been a difficult time. A lot of youth organizations have closed shop. And this is at a time when youth centres are closing, when picture for young people hasn't been all that great. And so when measuring impact, it's important to measure the Erasmus+ funded structures, the funded spaces that allow people to meet, to exchange, and to really just have that dialogue both nationally and internationally.
Mauricio Cutton, thank you so much, Chief International Spokesperson for the British Youth Council there. I'm so chuffed about this, you can probably tell. I hate the idea that something was taken away from British young people, an opportunity, a choice, an option. I'm not saying that it's the right thing for every single British young person to partake in a scheme like this, but the idea that it was one of many options which was available to young people historically that was taken away from them, I was a bit gutted about, to be honest. So the fact that this has been brought back into the picture and it's now something that our young people can consider, I'm really chuffed about. I want to know how we would categorise that advantage, how we would describe it. I know in my bones what it is to go somewhere and work there and live there for a period of time as opposed to just visit. I sort of know on an emotional level what the advantage of that is, but I'm struggling to articulate it, which is why I think I need to hear your stories of where it's you and you did it. What is it that you did in terms of that perspective, in terms of that broad outline that is so often referred to? Tell us what happened to you when you went and you lived abroad, both before 5, 6 or 6 or 9, 7, 8 as the last call, or indeed for somebody who's living in Britain. What did you gain from coming here? The number remains the same. You're listening to Natasha Devon and the time is 7:15.
Weekdays from 7 a.m. Straight to the point. How does this even add up? Nick Ferrari at breakfast on LBC. This is Listen on our free global player app or the new LBC app. Download it now from your app store. LBC.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome aboard your flight to Geneva. This is your captain.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the flight to Geneva. We are at
all the skis and snowboards. Enjoy a free flight to Winter Wonderland.
The best winter holidays start with the right airline. Book your family trip to Winter Wonderland now on Swiss.com and enjoy free gear transport. This Christmas at Tesco, enjoy selected festive vegetables for just 15p each with your Tesco Club card. Finding great prices, that's what makes it Christmas. Tesco, every little helps. Majority of large stores ends 24th of December. Club card or app required. When you smile, Banyan Dental dental root clinics with over 5,000 top-rated Google reviews. Keep on smiling.
Leading Britain's conversation, LBC, with Natasha Devlin.
It's 7:17 and in response to the glorious news that young people will once again be able to join in with the Erasmus scheme. It's now called Erasmus Plus, but I'm just calling it Erasmus for shorthand. I'm asking you to share your stories of what happened when you worked and lived abroad. 03456060973 is the number to call. Sarah has called from Stratford-upon-Avon. What would you like to say?
Hi, Natasha. Yeah, I'm just calling really to kind of give a little bit of a kind of perspective on. I think the program that's coming back on is absolutely fantastic. But I lived abroad when I was in my early 20s, not doing Erasmus, but I worked abroad. And I've got 4 kids between the ages of 18 and 23, and I've got 2 who've gone to uni, thousands of debt, done well, but you know, there's hundreds of thousands of debt. And my child is also waiting for the age of 18 with a backpack. Brilliant grades, for travelling. I've worked in Europe, she's worked her way around the world. Mostly Southeast Asia, Australia. She's off to mine. She's taught English before. She's got no and now my son is about to make his decision as whether he goes to uni or he follows her sister's example. But she has got a degree, but she said, Mum, I've learned so much from travelling, living in different communities, and not just travelling through, but she'll stay for 4, 5, 6 months.
I mean, you must have seen her change and evolve throughout that process. If you had...
Yeah, I mean, she can't sit still, and she will never settle to go and do a degree in the UK or anything. She might do one in Europe, maybe, or Asia.
But what do you think? Because there are people who are listening who, I'm sure, don't get it. They don't understand what you learn from going into. And to be clear, anybody can call. You don't have to have been part of the Erasmus scheme. Anybody who has lived or worked abroad can call this out. But they just wouldn't get what it is that you learn through that process. How do you think your daughter would describe it?
What she told me, she said that I don't need a degree, really, Mum, because I have learned so much from different cultures and living with people. She's cleared rainforests, she's scuba dived in clean reefs off the Philippines. She's done so many things and learned so many different, not languages, but she's just immersed herself in different cultures for a long time and not after a single penny. But she will never, I don't think she'll ever settle, actually. I think she'll
Oh, Sarah, thank you so much for your call and for sharing. I was thinking as Sarah was talking there, I haven't actually lived abroad for any great length of time, but I do travel a lot for my job. And I think there is something different about when you go somewhere to work than when you go somewhere on holiday. Obviously, because of the types of people that you meet and the environments that you're in. You know, I wouldn't be chatting to loads of teachers and school children and parents if I was just going somewhere and staying in a hotel and going to the beach and the other things people do when they're on holiday. I think for me one of the biggest things is understanding the way different cultures frame certain emotions that they translate the words for different emotions or the kind of cultural understanding of what is going on when two people do this. It just changes your understanding of human behaviour more broadly. That for me has been one of the major benefits of travel. It's kind of giving me layers of understanding and things to refer to when I'm observing the world. It's giving me a greater selection of things to pick from when I'm analysing how human beings are. has been a major advantage. But if you want to share what yours was, 0345 6060 is the number to call. Kate has called from Kingston. What would you like to say?
Oh, hello. I'd like to the question was brilliant. I was lucky. I did a reactions for 5 months when I was about 47 years old. I was on 2 occasions of the night through the day and working full time. Luckily, there was authority. Now, that's not very open to people in the private sector, so I didn't have a problem. I went to Yale University, schooled Islamic science, wrote a dissertation on their transport system of transport back here in Surrey. Did very well in that. But what you just said is absolutely true. It's how other people perceive the world through their language and how they frame things that is so different. I remember meeting my project director, leading his office in tears before 47 because I went around his ideas of no, very French. He said, because they all articulate the way you think and you're expected to be able to cope with it. But you know, I gave it serious thought. I ended up getting a distinction. But you know, I really found it a life-changing experience. I just hope it's a all people have a chance to go, not just privileged people or university students or adult education or apprenticeships for people who wouldn't normally get the chance to go. Those people need to go so that they can hear what they hear about other countries and they say, yeah, okay, but the policy is like that. Or I know that people there think this about that and they have the same problems as us, but they frame it differently, they deal with it differently. You know, where I was, they just had 200 tractors brought from traffic and dumped the usual manure in front of the prefecture. Not because they are protesting because it's too much pesticide, but the farmers want to continue using pesticide, and they don't want to, the authorities don't want it to upset the water too. Now that's very interesting to me, how one set of economic factors affect other people's lives. But I'm not saying it as all it's just them. You know, it's so important that we experience life to the good of everybody, and if we can pick out why people are acting the way they are, and how we can extract the good from it and move on together, and younger people can do that because they have the flexibility of mind to be open-minded and the energy, and they need it. I'm so delighted this has come back. I can't tell you, I totally agree with you, and thank you for taking my call. I hope that everybody, if they want to go and do Apui, fabulous fashion school called ENA. You know, they've got engineering, they've got a big centre of telecommunications. It was actually the start of the internet where they started the Minitel there. They've got 3D design going on in that field as well, artificial intelligence. They've got medicine, very highly trained medical field with robotics, very good dentistry. So for people to experience life where it's dealt with differently, I think is great. And they can bring it back here. And similarly, we've got great, we've got better plugs and traffic lights for starters. You know, I mean, you know, the plugs and traffic lights thing is a big thing. And cat's eyes on the road, they don't have those out there. Why not? We've got cat's eyes. So there are things we can all learn from and move on as humanity, benefit from it, and young people can have much richer lives in every sense. So I just hope that it's open to everybody. And thanks for taking my call.
You're so welcome, Kate. Thank you for making the call. And interesting what Kate was saying at the end there, that there's also, of course, that often travelling makes you appreciate home. I know that's certainly true for me whenever I fly back into Heathrow or Gatwick or Stansted or wherever it is that I'm flying back into. There are things that you really miss when you've been away for a long time that you forgot to notice when you were here. An appreciation for what's great about one's own country. It is also a benefit of travel. 0345 6060 is the number to call if you want to get involved in this conversation. We have a first-time caller now. Will has called from Hammersmith. What would you like to say?
Hi there, thanks for taking my call. So I was on the Erasmus grant back in 2014, and I was spent a year in Copenhagen, and I thought it was an absolutely life-changing year, not only for the experience, but also for the ability to have conversations in all of the meetings, which I now take. I'm 30 years old, so haven't been out since been in work for about 8 years or so, and I speak about it in every single interview I go to, and it's a topic of conversation which employees really, really love. So I'm really glad that the generation now can kind of take that. I also do feel a little bit bad for those who missed out on it.
Yeah, me too. Me too. And when you went to live in Copenhagen, you described it as life-changing. How was it life-changing? Can you describe it?
Yeah, I think it's just a different perspective you get on the world. So Copenhagen and Denmark are very forward-thinking country. The way the government look at different policies, the way I don't know if it's the same case anymore, but I think people get paid to go to university there, and just kind of taking a different perspective on university living, kind of even up to kind of the cultural side of things and how people want to dine out there, the architecture. I just think it's an amazing thing to be able to do. And I remember earlier on when you were speaking about it, you said it's not the same as going on holiday, but I do think there's a big similarity, but it's in a way more intense situation. And when I say that, like when you go on holiday and you come back, you might be speaking to friends or family or colleagues just about the bars you went to, the people you met, the beaches you went onto, etc. It's exactly that, but in a way more extreme situation.
And it's interesting what you say about the government encouraging people to go into further education. And that is true. So I've been to Copenhagen, I've also been to Stockholm. And everyone you meet there, and I'm making a really broad generalisation here, but everyone I encountered in these countries was so well read and so interesting and had so many things to say about quite academic matters a lot of the time. Do you get the sense that there's more equality in terms of people being able to access further education?
I don't know if this is the same syllabus anymore, but I remember when I was the university students were studying in the I'm trying to think what age I was, mid-20s, something like that. A lot of the students there still studied English when I wasn't studying English, I studied business. And their vocabulary was arguably better than mine at that time, and again, thinking likewise. And there was just that conversation about the hard government that we're doing compared to theirs. I found it fascinating, and I've come back to England now, and I've lived in another country, I lived in Shanghai for a while, and comparing those different places is absolutely amazing. And as I said, I think going back to the future, the job perspective, I think it's something which I speak about all the time. It's really exciting to the next generation. I think you said it was 2027, which is coming in. That's a great thing.
Well, thank you so much for your call. This is the type of thing, I mean, these are the types of people that we need to hear from. And you don't have to take part in Erasmus, but if you just really worked and describe what it taught you, then you will have other things. That's what we're trying to get to the love of this conversation. 034566973 is the number. It's what I say now. It's time for news headlines with Roger Wright. Vice Chancellor and Chief Executive of Universities from the East England. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. How do you respond to this news about Erasmus?
Yeah, I think it's really good news for all of the reasons. It gives more opportunities to our students to develop skills, to gain experience in countries. They will build confidence, and ultimately will make a big difference in their future trajectory of learning. Experiences that they have. But I think the other thing that's really good about Erasmus to universities is it's a two-way street. But we also get students coming into the to reach out communities here. So our students also benefit from this and develop some income streams as well.
Think about trees. Chipotle sauce and a mega cheese meal, and it's giving the new cheesy chicken stack at McDonald's. Ancient nice cheesy. Available from the January 26th from 11 a.m. Plus, this is availability. In fact, they've got more games than Las Vegas gaming convention's annual conventional games.
Lots of games.
Yeah, it's over 4,000 slot games, including all your favourites like Big Bass Bonanza, casino tables like Roulette, Blackjack, and casino games like Crazy Time.
Listen to me. Make your best bet on big tickets. 18 plus.
To take your pets over this festive period, visit petsinnapickle.co.uk and enjoy Christmas covered. This is LBC. Message Natasha Devon on WhatsApp now. 0345 6060 973.
It is 7:33 and we are having a fascinating conversation about what it is that living or working abroad does for you that can't be captured with a holiday. And travel is always wonderful. A holiday is a wonderful thing as well. But there's something about working somewhere and living somewhere and being immersed in a community for a longer period of time that does something to your perspective. We're trying to nail down precisely what it is because, of course, the Erasmus scheme has reopened and now British young people will have the option to travel more than they would have done were that not the case. But before we return to that conversation, though, I was looking at this piece earlier today, the headline of which is Mamdani calls a Marina Abramovich at Queen's Museum. This is a really fascinating story. So Mamdani has gone to the Queen's Museum and invited visitors to have a meeting with him and tell him their feelings about New York, about the Trump administration, about the world. It's kind of like speed dating in a way, but more of an opportunity to present influential people in America. And joining us to discuss this is Adelaide Demoa, who is a painter and performance artist. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. What do you think about what Mamdani has done?
I think it's really interesting, actually, and from the looks of it, he was kind of riffing off a Marina Abramovich performance, My Body is Present, in which she sat for a lot of hours and allowed people to come and sit with her and just stare into her eyes. And get emotional, proposed marriage, all sorts of interesting things happened in that confrontation. With this situation, it feels to me as though presenting an opportunity for constituents to come and sit with him in a way that allowed him to be able to empathise with their actual situations. It doesn't feel like a PR stunt. It feels like he really wants to connect, and that is the power of that kind of creativity in which you're sitting and engaging with human beings. Is you don't have a choice but to engage empathetically with another human being sitting right in front of you, which to me is really interesting about how that could potentially impact policy.
Is there something as well about the opportunity of those people to look Mamdani in the eye and realise that he is a human being? Yeah, we live in a world where politicians have become almost avatars, haven't they? They're so celebrified. I don't know if that's a word, but you know what I mean. That people are often quite performatively cruel to them, particularly on social media, and forget that they too are human beings.
Yeah, exactly. That's why this kind of interaction encourages this level of intersubjectivity that it allows for empathy from both sides. And I think that is really important, especially considering Mamdani's identity and all the things that he's had to face in terms of the attacks regarding his identity, the fact that he's from an immigrant background, the fact that he is Muslim, the fact that he's pro-Palestinian, you know, all of these things would shape the way people would view him. So I think that is really important to humanise politicians as well.
Do you think that this is something that only Mamdani could pull off, or do you think that it could be the start of a trend?
obviously, I don't know politicians personally. I mean, there's one MP who I have on my WhatsApp in my local area, but I think that he is exactly the kind of personality that can pull this off. Especially he's young, he is genuinely impressive. He's very confident. I don't know that other politicians will be able to pull it off, but I suspect they might try because from the looks of it, it's been a great success.
Thank you so much, Adelaide Demara, who's a painter and performance artist, giving her take on what Mandani has done. It's a really fascinating thing to do, and I wonder if it is the sort of beginning of a sea change against what social media has done in terms of dehumanizing us, and we're sort of shouting abuse at each other a lot of the time, and bringing the humanity back into the room. I find it a really fascinating concept, and I wonder whether, maybe not politicians, but whether other public figures will follow suit. Let's return now to our conversation about Erasmus, about travel, about what working and living abroad does for a person. Conrad has called from Hove. What would you like to say?
Hi Natasha, good show as always. Basically, I lived in Brazil for 22 years. Lived in 3 countries and worked in 5. Got a postgrad and MBA out in Brazil. Our daughter's going to the US next month to do a doctorate. But the experience, I'm on 3 WhatsApp groups, 2 from ex-colleagues, friends and 1 friends, and speak 2 languages every day. But the best thing I found with 35 countries I've been to actually is I love cooking, so I can easily cook anything from about 10 countries.
Did you say you visited 35 countries?
Yeah, I've been to 35 countries. I've worked in 5 of them.
Wow, okay. And so, how would you calculate the difference between going somewhere where, for example, living there as opposed to visiting for a holiday?
You have a different perspective. I once met a couple of colleagues in Cardiff, where I met a chance, and they said it's brilliant talking to you because you can get all these silly questions. You don't understand everything, and it's you have to survive. You've got to learn the local language anyway. But it's different thing. You can go on holiday, you're coming back in 2 weeks, but if you're stuck out there, you've got to throw all your normal issues you go through life. You've got to deal with them.
That's interesting. So it's almost, you have to throw all of your cultural assumptions and parts of your identity away almost and reinvent yourself. Is that fair to say?
No, I think it's more of an exchange of cultures and local things between both parties, basically.
Conrad, thank you so much for your call and for sharing that with us. Sarah has called from Purley. What would you like to say?
Oh, hello, hi. Thanks for taking my call. I just wanted to say how fantastic Erasmus has been, because I think probably 30 years actually ago, I did a French and German degree and I went to go and live in Saarbrücken, which is on the southwest border with France, in Germany, right next to France. So I did that. German every day we work in the school, and also I did went to university, so I had that experience. But then what I'm really excited about for young people, and I'm so excited for young people when they get this opportunity again, but in addition to that, I've become a French and German teacher as a result of doing a degree and spending time in school and enjoying it. But up until Brexit, I've organised Erasmus projects. And I was in a the other day, one particular and so what that's been is I'm organising literally about 50 trips in total in at least 12 or 13 years or so I've been all the time, and organising projects that we have to apply for with other schools in different countries, say between Finland, other children the same age and talk to them, and some they used to do school exchanges staying in their houses as well. Having that proper authentic experience of getting to know other people. But for some of them, they were quite nervous when they went as people, and they came back different, you know, like confident, and because they'd done something exciting. And I just think there's nothing better than going to different countries and actually spending time with the people from those countries and speaking the language. You know, another way of doing things. And I think it'd be amazing for the young people to have these experiences again.
And I suppose the confidence as well also comes from doing something that they didn't necessarily know they could do.
Yes, I think so. Because I mean, there's one thing chatting in, you know, talking in French in the classroom, isn't it? It's totally different having a real conversation with a real person in a different country, and then getting to know, you know, not just the language, but also all about different way of life, and then I just think it makes. I think these have been the best experiences of my life, you know, going to different countries. Like living in Germany at the time it's quite nerve-wracking first to go there, and then the German's not very good, and then you get used to it, then eventually it clicks and you can actually speak German, and then you get friends who are German, and then the English people I met there, I'm still really good friends with now. So, I mean, you know, I honestly, I was just so happy that the day when Brexit happened, I remember, I think it was a Christmas Eve when they said that there wasn't going to be any more Erasmus. I was really upset, I actually cried. Because I've had all these experiences were so amazing, especially for the kids that I was teaching, you know, and so and so relieved that this is coming back again, so that, you know, our young people aren't going to be parochial, they're going to be, you know, global citizens, and understand their place in the wider world, you know, not just in their own towns, and, you know, what happens here.
Sarah, thank you so much for your call and for sharing that, and putting to bed as well some of the criticisms coming in by text saying, well, this is only for privileged people and only for university. I don't know where people get the idea that if you go to university you're automatically privileged. I suppose that's true to a degree, but it's certainly not the case that only the very wealthiest people go to university like it has been in the past. But Sarah there describing how Erasmus makes it easier for school children to experience different cultures. I remember some of the people that I went to school with did a French exchange, and I don't know if it was under Erasmus or how it was organised, but came back very disappointed that French people didn't always have hot chocolate and croissants for breakfast, because all of your French textbooks, that's all anybody ever eats is hot chocolate and croissants. They came back and went, is that cornflakes like we did? Anyway, if you have a more inspiring story of how travel broadened your mind, 0345 6060 0973 is the number to call. Time is 7:46.
Nick Ferrari at breakfast on LBC. It's been a Hanukkah horror and one almost like any before. 15 partygoers murdered on a beach in Australia, and we heard from eyewitness Tommy.
It was literally just, it was like a carnage scene, everyone screaming.
Back on the home front, Greater Manchester Police Chief Constable Stephen Watson spelt out the impact for British Jews.
A group of 10-year-old girls wanting to go to a Hanukkah party where they should be frankly interested in balloons and bicycles are making a request for armed police officers.
Hanukkah is meant to be a celebration of light, but why is the outlook currently so dark for so many? Nick Ferrari at breakfast, back Monday morning from 7. Listen on our free Global Player app or the new LBC app.
Waitrose presents really fancy a mince pie. One man's selfless journey from sofa to kitchen. For a number one golden mince pie with juicy golden raisins, cherries and apricots, and zesty limoncello. For a number one golden mince pie with juicy golden raisins, cherries and apricots, zesty limoncello, and a dollop of fresh cream.
And then
subject to availability. Take the world's best snooker players of the most unpredictable seasons. The electric atmosphere of Alexandra Palace. It can only be 2026 Johnston's Paint Masters. Could it be Sean Murphy, Judd Trump, Neil Robertson, world champion Chowsing Tom takes the trophy? One thing's certain, nothing beats the Johnston's Paint Masters live. Enjoy our biggest ever fan zone. Watch in style on VIP sofas. Book now. WST.tv/tickets. This festive season at McDonald's gets deals every day. Okay. But a
top-rated Google reviews. Keep on smiling.
This is LBC with Natasha Devon.
It's 7:48 and Vara has called from Wigan. What would you like to say?
Well, I would like to say that me and my mum, we travel a lot. We travel a lot around a lot of the world, and I just want to say that having that sort of level of approach to travel is absolutely amazing. Because I feel like as a society, having a better understanding of different cultures and stuff would really improve us. And I just feel like that if more students would have that ability to just study and go around the world in different cultures, it will just improve us a lot as a society.
Vara, how old are you?
12.
Okay, so you already are saying if there were more people who had access to what I have access to on the world travel, it would improve our society here in Britain. And that's presumably something that you have discovered through travelling yourself. So can you explain why you think that?
It was just because, obviously loads of things around the world, like racism and horrible things like that happen. I feel like if we travel around the world with loads of more, a better... Hello?
Yeah, I'm still here.
If we have a better understanding of what's going on around the world, it will just improve us, and it will just help with culture.
And I completely agree with you. And so, do you say that you travel around with your mum? Is that for your mum's work?
Yeah, because originally I moved to Finland, and it was just a big difference than the country I used to live in England, because it brought so many new adventures and stuff, and I just feel like if more people had the ability to do that, then it would just be amazing.
I guess it makes the rest of the world less scary, doesn't it? And a lot of things like racism come from a place of fear.
Yeah.
Vara, thank you so much for picking up the phone and talking to me. I really appreciate it. Andrew has called from Watford. What would you like to say?
Lagi bilang dah buka apa apa. Something called Running International, and I just took a chance. I managed to get into Running International, raised funds to go and Australia, Russia, Japan, like 30 years ago, and we're still going to have a Zoom call with my Japanese family on Christmas Day. And from there, it just gave me such an opportunity that I actually went back to work. And I worked my way around Australia, back to Japan, across Canada, and what that gave me is just gave me such a massive boost in my confidence with I really wanted my children when they got to the age to do travelling, because I thought it gave me such a confidence boost. The trip was my longest official when I came back up and worked in an office. Well, I took with my salary, and from there, and I've now worked in America and in Abu Dhabi. So I think it gives you, from a working class background, this couple works really helps. My son's followed my super world challenge, has been born. I met my wife, she wanted to switch to Spain, she came back. So I think the two obstacles really, I think it just says that when children choose it, I think that King Charles V International is such a great way of doing it, because you get to think before
That's the thing. So many people seem a little bit resentful about Erasmus from the tone of the text that are coming into the studio. Some people seem to think that it's only going to be the remit of the privileged, but the fact is it's open to people who are on apprenticeships, it's open to people in lots of forms of higher education, and I also think it's a slightly old-fashioned idea to think that everybody who goes to university comes from a privileged background. It's still the case to a certain extent, but certainly not to the extent that it was. Skip video.
Everybody, you go to interviews and you get this, you've got no experience. So you think, well, what am I supposed to do? Anyway, my father was brilliant. He used to go out, get the Trade magazine every week. And for a year, I just did anything, worked in a bar. But I was still like thinking, wow, I've given up. Never give up. That's what I say. Never give up. Follow your dream. And I got a job. And it could have been Timbuktu for all I cared, and it wasn't. It was South Africa.
Okay.
And it opened up my eyes. It gave me a different perspective. And then when I came back to England, I could put that on my TV. And I still have that money. The job then started coming in. And this is where I believe that that's the piece of what people say, well, what did you go to university? And by the way, I wasn't privileged. I had a scholarship. I asked for my life, but they couldn't do it. Working class. And my dad felt me get a scholarship to work. But I never see myself as privileged. I worked to get there. My portfolio is able to get me in there and get me a
So when you were in South Africa, were you working? Okay.
I had an interview in London in as well.
I see. Okay. So because I was trying to.
Dreamline.
The reason I asked that is because you mentioned working at a bar earlier. I was trying to.
And in what we have, and that's
So I wanted to get the experience that you needed in order to go up to the next run where all the jobs were, but you couldn't enter the profession here in Britain.
You would always get what experience have you got, and you say, well, give me the chance, give me the opportunity. And one of the things I would always say is that if you do go to university, I think it's always fantastic when they send you on a gap year. In regards to travel, we went to Italy, we came to London, when we left uni, and it opened up the eyes completely, seeing different cultures at 18, 19, 20, and it gave you so much confidence when you get a job abroad. Honestly, I had my own room, my own studio.
And you still have a hint of a South African accent as well.
No, I haven't heard it.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that you feel poorly, Veronica. I hope you feel better very soon. I thought I was detecting some Antipodean vowels in there, but apparently not. Apparently flu has the same impact. Lots of people who are texting in to say this is effectively discrimination. So Sean says, surely it's unlawful as it doesn't allow the same benefits or opportunities to all and is based upon age. What about the ability of older people to take advantage of the benefits of travel and overseas living? I think the thing about that, Sean, is that unfortunately 52% of people who voted in the 2016 referendum voted to take that right away from themselves. And if you tell them that they didn't know that they were voting to do that, they get very cross and tell you that you're being patronising, and they knew exactly what they were voting for, but they wanted to patch themselves in the face. But the 20-year-old now would have been 10 when the referendum took place. and would have had the opportunity to vote to take away that opportunity from themselves. So I think it is right, actually, even though this doesn't just apply to young people, it applies to mature students as well. I think it is right that we give it to the people who did not choose Brexit, and all the polls suggest the referendum today would not choose Brexit. Really interesting conversation again. Now, in the final hour of the show, it has certainly been very busy in central London today, which will no doubt come as a relief to many retailers. They've seen a sluggish spending during the festive season, and consumers are repeatedly engaged in a game of chicken with retailers, hoping they'll lower prices even further because the take-up wasn't as strong as predicted on Black Friday. The hospitality industry is also reporting disappointing profits, and many are blaming Rachel Reeves's budget and would-be festive revellers feeling the pinch in its aftermath. I want to know if you have first-hand experience of this, but I also want to know if you think there's an advantage to spending less money this Christmas. I know lots of people who are having a simpler Christmas this year and are relieved to feel less pressure. Are you one of them?
On your radio, on the LBC app, and
Hey, LBC.
Leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
From Global Newsroom at 8 o'clock. Analysis of the latest Jeffrey Epstein files to be released in the United States is showing nearly 700 pages have been entirely redacted. President Trump's being accused of breaking the law by two politicians after full disclosure of the information became a legal requirement. Kyle Cheney has been telling LBC some important truths could be hidden.
Assured us that people who are just they're not going to be redacted here, that the expectancy that we have not seen yet really come up, and it'll make them wonder whether they're behind some of these redactions that might help us paint a better picture of the full investigation and then Jeffrey Epstein's influence and power.
The inclusion of images of celebrities and public figures in the files does not suggest any wrongdoing. Nigel Farage is facing calls to sack one of Reform UK's mayoral candidates over comments online about the Justice Secretary, David Lammy. Chris Parry has been selected for the Hampshire and Solent area. Labour says a posting from February was racist and grossly offensive. Senior figures in Reform have so far declined to comment on Mr Parry's opinions. US officials say it's seizing a vessel off the coast of Venezuela. It's believed to be in international waters, with the operation being led by the US Coast Guard. President Trump has already announced a blockade of all sanctioned oil tankers entering and leaving Venezuela. A murder investigations began after a 55-year-old man was shot dead in northwest London. Officers were called to Stonebridge at about 9:30 last night. The US says it hit 70 targets in central Syria last night during airstrikes against the so-called Islamic State group. It's been responding to the killing of two of its servicemen and a civilian during an attack on a military convoy. Closer ties have developed between the two nations since President Trump lifted economic sanctions. Syria's leader, Ahmed al-Sharaa, is welcoming that.
Special thanks to US President Donald Trump for responding to the call of the Syrian people, and to the members of Congress for recognizing the sacrifices of the Syrian people and answering their call by lifting sanctions in Syria.
And the Coast Guard is responding after an unoccupied vessel ran aground at a beach in Aberdeenshire. A Creole boat hits the area at Inverbervie with its engine still running just before lunchtime. LBC weather, rain and strong winds for Wales, Northern Ireland and the southwest of the UK overnight. Cloudy with drizzle for the rest of England, but drier in Scotland. We'll see a low of around 4 degrees. From Global's newsroom for LBC, I'm Tim Daly.
This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation with Natasha Devon.
It is 3 minutes past 8, so there's a few different threads to this story. But first of all, there is the retail side of things. It's Super Saturday today, so-called. It's the last Saturday before Christmas. And it's always a busy shopping day. It was so busy in London today. I have discovered a secret snicket between the bus stop and LBC. And today there were people in my snicket. There's never anyone in my snicket. It's a really fast way for me to get into work. Today, other people were there. That's how busy it was. You could barely move in central London today. And I'm assuming that the same is the case for other cities throughout the country. So it does seem like people have turned out to spend their money. And what some experts are saying is that it's almost a game of chicken with the retailers. So that because Black Friday wasn't as big as it has been the past couple of years. I can't remember when Black Friday became a thing. It's sort of embedded into our culture, but it's been a thing for a couple of years now. And because Black Friday was not as huge as they were expecting, what retailers have worked out is the customers have worked out is that the retailers will reduce their prices even further. So it's essentially customers leaving their shopping until the very last minute in the hope of getting the very best deal. But that's going to have an impact on retailers, even if we have had a Super Saturday. If retailers have had to reduce their prices even further than the Black Friday sale, that's going to have an impact on small businesses. And you've also, of course, got hospitality. Rachel Reeves' budget has left people feeling squeezed. And people aren't going out for meals and going out for drinks, perhaps, as much as they would do ordinarily. So the first thing I want to ask you is if you're somebody who works in hospitality, somebody who's a small business owner, perhaps you work in retail, how has this year been different from Christmases in the past? 6060973 is the number that you need. You can text 84850 or send a comment to LBC via your Alexa. The other question I want to ask is I want to look at the flip side of that coin. As somebody who is a consumer, I do think it's a shame if people are going out this Christmas and socialising less. But in terms of buying less stuff, I think that might actually be a good thing. Not for the retailers, obviously, and not for the businesses, but for us, the consumers. There are so many presents that we buy for people that elicit a little chuckle maybe when you open them, and then by Boxing Day they're discarded and largely forgotten. And there's so much pressure, I think, that we feel to buy gifts for people that they don't necessarily want, and then they find this pressure that they have to buy as a gift in return. And there are so many things that we spend money on unnecessarily over Christmas. And I know lots of people who are saying, do you know what, this year there's a cost of living crisis. Everybody will understand, everyone will get it if I say I'm not doing gifts this year, or I'm only going to spend a tenner per gift on my family this year. I'm not going to go mad this year with presents. And people will understand because everybody feels less wealthy than they think they should be at the moment, with the exception of 0.1% of billionaires. Pretty much everybody is experiencing some aspect of the cost of living crisis. And I think that might be a good thing, because Christmas was out of control. And we sort of lost the meaning of it. And I don't necessarily mean the religious meaning of it, because not everybody who celebrates Christmas has a faith. But I do mean that the peace of Christmas, the everybody taking some time off, the spending time with your friends and your family and your neighbours, the community of Christmas got lost a little bit. So there's an opportunity to reclaim it. So I also want to hear from you if you are having a simpler Christmas this year and you're kind of glad about that. And I particularly want to hear from you if you are a parent and that's the case. Because there was a nationwide survey which found that 6 in 10 parents said that their Christmas traditions were under threat because of the cost of living crisis. The average parent spends £673 on Christmas. Is that a good thing? You might feel guilty because your children have certain expectations, but is it good for them to learn that Christmas isn't just about having piles of plastic rubbish? There's more to it as a festival. 0345 606 0973 is the number to call. You can text 84850 or send a comment to LBC via your Alexa. We're joined now by Madeline Ross, who is the money reporter at the Telegraph. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. So what have you seen in terms of trends and people's spending patterns this Christmas? How is it different from years hence?
Well, you already noted that Black Friday was quite significantly down this year. Retailers didn't see the bump that they like to expect from their late November sales. That's sort of one of the final paydays before Christmas, and lots of people who are sensible and get ahead with their Christmas spending and their presents by then. But having such a late budget means that people were holding their breath. They were waiting to see what the impact of Rachel Reeves' budget was. I think a lot of people, while the stealth tax will have an impact in a few years' time, a lot of people were quite relieved. So actually, there's a bit of a lack of the tension that was there before. So it's 50 million shopping trips this weekend, which are predicted, and £3.4 billion of spending, which is up 12% on last year. I was out yesterday in central London, and I had a similar experience to you. It was absolutely heaving. The retailers are definitely taking full advantage of this. I saw sales already on across the board, almost 50% off in some places, which is a discount you wouldn't normally expect to see till sort of Boxing Day and the Boxing Day sales. So it's a slightly more positive picture for many than I think a lot of people were expecting before the budget. And so there's this little bit of cushion. People want to spend, they want to have a nice Christmas, they want to make the most of it. And you're right, a lot of other people will also be thinking, right, I should consolidate, maybe I don't need to spend quite as much. We'll have to see when the final numbers come out, but the predictions look good.
And what impact would that have on retailers having to put their prices down to a level that you would traditionally only see at Boxing Day? Does that mean that the sector is going to be less profitable this year?
It doesn't necessarily mean that. I mean, they're taking a look at the current state of play, and they recognise that a lot of people nowadays will buy their Christmas presents online. They're not going out to the shops. The annual Christmas shopping trip is not necessarily a thing for as many people. So they're taking a risk, right? They're thinking, okay, if we drop our prices and we might sell more units, that might mean that our profitability is stronger. Obviously, if they drop the prices and they still don't sell the units, then it will cut into profits. But many retailers have had very strong years. Consumer confidence this year has been relatively steady.
And what about the hospitality sector? What do we know about the kind of Christmas that they've had?
So I think the picture for the hospitality sector going into next year is definitely a difficult one. They were expecting the business rates changes at the budget to be more favourable than they have been. So a lot of publicans and landlords are very, very worried that unless their festive sales really hold up this year, that they're going to have to close, or they're going to have to reduce hours or reduce the numbers of staff. Next year, I mean, 63 pubs closed in 6 months to October. That's an 85% increase on 2024. So it's definitely a very difficult time, and there are rising costs across the board for hospitality. That being said, I was out last night. I had a lovely time. I've got several more meals planned. I'm sure a lot of other people feel the same. It's a special time of year. Consumers do go that little bit further than they would normally go, and I think sentiment is strong overall.
Madeleine Ross, thank you so much, money reporter at The Telegraph there. And I want to make it clear, I'm not seeking to celebrate the fact that nobody's got any money. I don't think that that's a good thing. What I'm saying is that's a cloud, and there's a silver lining potentially to that cloud, which is that it takes a bit of the pressure off, because I think that previously there's a pressure to kind of keep up with everybody else's spending over Christmas, and even if you weren't feeling particularly flush, you would feel like you had to get a gift for everybody, and you had to put on a kind of lavish meal or whatever it was. But because the cost of living is affecting pretty much all of us to some degree, there's no one who's not going to get it if you say, I'm really sorry, I'm not doing gifts this year, or I'm only doing small gifts this year. And what I'm saying is, even though that's not a good thing in terms of people are struggling, it might be a good thing in terms of us recapturing the proper spirit of Christmas. I'm going full like Pollyanna here. In terms of, Christmas, I'm thinking about actually more than Pollyanna. I'm thinking about, there's a George Monbiot piece, and it's really old, it's years old, this piece, but he talked about how most people, you struggle to think what to buy them for Christmas. Very rarely do you buy someone something that they need for Christmas. You buy them something that you think they might want, and a lot of the time it's a novelty thing. And then discarded or forgotten about. It's really difficult to remember a year on what you got last Christmas, the gift that you received last Christmas. And what he says is that the last line of this article is, bake them a cake, write them a poem, give them a kiss, tell them a joke. For God's sake, stop trashing the planet to tell someone that you care. All it shows is that you don't. And I'm also thinking about, I read a piece in the New York Times where people were reflecting on the best gift they have ever received. The best gift they ever received at Christmas. You would not believe the amount of them that cost nothing. So I'll share some of my favourite ones with you in just a moment. But I just think that if we have to be a little bit more imaginative, maybe spend time with somebody or do something that doesn't cost anything, that takes some effort for someone else for Christmas, there's something really beautiful about that. But please don't think I'm being Jacob Rees-Mogg saying that, food banks are good for the soul or whatever it was that he said. That's not the vibe I'm bringing to this conversation. I'm just asking you, is it quite nice actually not to be this Christmas because you've decided to have a bit of a simple? 0345 606 0973 is the number that you need. The time is 8:15.
This is LBC.
Gift more for less when you shop at the O2 this Christmas. Save up to 70% off RRP on over 60 of their favourite designer brands, including Nike, Tommy Hilfiger, Le Creuset, the cosmetics company store, and Lindt. Ticked everyone off your list. Start the festivities at one of our 30 bars and restaurants. Enjoy a movie or get competitive with bowling, climbing, interactive football, indoor skydiving, and more. Find us at North Greenwich, just 15 minutes from central London. Search outlet shopping at the O2 to start planning your visit.
At Fidelity, we've been helping our customers plan for their requirements for more than 20 years. To understanding how much you need, to comparing multiple pensions, we offer expert insights, excellent service, and even financial advice, so you can feel confidently invested in your future. For pensions, advice, and investment accounts, be invested with Fidelity. Go to fidelity.co.uk. Your capital is at risk. Transferring is not right for everyone. Terms apply.
This is LBC. Message Natasha Devon on WhatsApp now. 0345 6060 973.
It is behind a paywall, unfortunately, but they talk about, I think there's 13 of the best gifts. They ask their readership, what's the best gift you've ever received for Christmas? And then they publish their favourite 13. And I picked out 3, but there were lots in there that didn't cost anything at all or cost very, very little. So my 3 favourites were, when I was in my 20s, I asked my father to record himself reading my favourite children's books as a Christmas present. I wanted to make sure my kids would be able to enjoy his storytelling abilities as much as I had, even if he wasn't around anymore by the time that they were born. I think that's a great idea. Even if it's not a legacy thing to play to your children, asking somebody to read your favourite story so that you can play it like an audiobook anytime you want. How beautiful is that? In fact, for her birthday, one of my friends asked me to record myself singing one of her favourite songs.